The first thing is, first on, is there any public participation? Seeing none, and hearing none, we'll go to the next item, which is the Greenwood invoices and update. Here's the easy part, there are none. There were no invoices to pay. There was no update. Phil had asked a question about warranties regarding the roof. We're trying to get that answer. So I told Anthony he didn't have to appear just to say he doesn't have an answer yet. So we'll get that at our next meeting and hopefully finalize the whole thing, get through the punch list, make sure everything's done. And we can probably do that for the next meeting. The next issue is, Mr. Conway, are you still on? There you are. Hi, Joe. It had to do with the proposals. I should say proposal, not proposals. I did the agenda and I anticipated more than one. However, there was only one. And that proposal has been made. Get all the papers I got over here. By Weston and Sampson. Anybody have any questions regarding the proposal before we just go to finalize it?
Just a quick comment on Weston and Sampson. When I worked in North Reading, which I retired from as of July 1st, Weston and Sampson managed the water treatment plant for North Reading High School. For, I'll say, 6 years, we renewed their contract 3 years ago. Very complicated. Per the state, was overly complicated treatment plant as far as managing all the particulars. We renewed their contract. We negotiated at a higher rate from another company. We awarded to the Weston and Sampson over another company because of we felt that they could do a good job managing it, and they have done a good job. We had some issues at the beginning with water treatment coming off of the cooling towers and messing up the chemicals in the treatment plant, but we corrected that and with their help. And I just think they're a solid company, just my opinion. So,
okay.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. Anybody else have any discussion? Joe?
Yep.
You reviewed the proposal. I know you wanted to have the advisory committee meet, but that was during the snowstorm.
Yes.
So they chickened out. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I'll remember that.
Yeah, that's all right. That's okay. But you reviewed it. I reviewed it. It seems to meet all the requests for services that we asked for. It's not only just looking at the North Avenue facility, but also 2 other alternative sites, which is one of the big issues that we had.
Yep.
I don't know if you had any other comments to make, Joe, before committee has any further discussion.
Sure. So I was a little bit surprised that we didn't get anybody other than Weston and Sampson. Although if you asked me from the very beginning, I would have told you that I was almost certain that they would put a proposal in. I know they're familiar with Wakefield's want to rehab the facility. If you remember when there was an appetite potentially for the Camp Curtis project, Weston and Sampson did a very, very preliminary look into what something between the town of Wakefield and Reading combined might look like there. So it only made sense where they'd started to do a little bit of homework on it, that, they would come in pretty aggressive on this one. Turns out that they happened to have no competition, but they came through the walkthrough that we held. They asked a lot of questions. They took a lot of pictures and seemed to be hitting all the spots. The nice thing about at least Weston and Sampson from our standpoint, kind of in the water, sewer fields, things like that. So different things we might be asking about what we're looking for in a building. They kind of understand the end result. So just looking forward to meeting with them and getting the ball rolling, really.
Anybody have any questions or discussion regarding Weston and Sampson's proposal?
So Joe, what are the other 2 sites that we're looking at?
My staff is actually going to go through that and look. So knowing that Wakefield's pretty built out, that's tough. One of the sites that's in the proposal to look at is potentially realigning some of the space with the access road behind the junior high, maybe the Kytron building, depending on what's going on there. If not, my staff is looking into a piece of property up by the 128 area. If I had to guess right now, though, it sounds like it's probably too wet to make the project worth it. The other idea that was flown around that we haven't really looked at too much was maybe potentially like a Nacella Field or Del Carmine Street if we were to flip flop and put our building down there and then build a baseball field at North Ave next to the junior high school.
Gotcha.
So we have about 4 properties to vet out. It's honestly, it seems pretty uphill as far as whether or not anything's going to work. Certainly, we're not going to fill in a swamp to try to build the building. That's just going to take the cost and make it a telephone number. But
Is the leaf dump area, is that in consideration as well?
probably not. The only reason why I say that is because if we lose that, it would take our operating costs and increase that. I also expect that the MSBA project is going to be eyeballing that for some lay down space so they don't have to mobilize, quite as much. I do know that one of the issues you have down there is that it's full of peat and fill. So we have problems with the building sinking at North Ave now. I think down there to drill through to hit something solid enough to put a foundation footing on is going to be, 80, 100 feet, if not more.
We had Pete at the Galvin, right, Jerry?
You sure did.
Yeah. We have it at the barn on North Ave too.
One thing I will say about Weston and Sampson is they work with us on the Galvin School, so I mean they definitely have a wealth of knowledge about the property all around that area.
So when we were doing the walkthrough, they spent a lot of time looking at the footings. I know that they've also pulled all the environmental on the property and the abutting properties, specifically the Kytron building, and that was before, we could even really get to them and start dialogue with them. So I'm sure they've done their homework and are doing their homework on that. So they mentioned a couple things about if we were to stay on the same site, whether or not they're going to go geopile or grade beam and different things like that. So the wheels are definitely turning on their end, I would assume.
All right, any other questions? Just to let you know, their fee proposal was for $91,000, which was within our budget of $100,000.
And this is just feasibility, right? This is not
Correct. Yes.
So one thing I will say, I know, Joe, you remember when we did the school, the culvert goes under that property.
Yep.
Are we considering doing what we did when we did the school, replacing the culvert piece going through there?
It would be my recommendation if we're going to do any deep digging next to it that we replace that. And I'd probably
It would be mine too. I mean, I saw the condition of what we replaced when we did the Galvin.
Yeah, so it only makes sense, right? So the Galvin piece is relatively new. I would even argue that you should probably take it all the way to the other side of North Ave, where it comes out behind the liquor store and the plaza there. And
Sure.
you might as well do the whole thing fresh, whether that's encompassed in a project like that, or if I have to come up with another capital project to do the road crossing itself. But it only makes sense to touch it once and do it right.
I agree.
Any further questions or discussion?
Just a quick comment. This may have already been addressed, maybe it was, on that culvert. A million years ago, probably 1997, when I was facilities director in Wakefield, we had a tremendous storm, and it flooded out of the Crystal Lake into the culvert and flooded the basement of the old middle school up to about 12 feet of water. And I guess it's been addressed, but I just want to be clear that when it was a disaster for us for over school vacation week, and we pumped and got the school running. But I know that's an issue, and I guess as long as it's being addressed or has been addressed, it's not an issue. Any comments?
Well, there's no manholes inside the new Galvin Middle School. They're outside the building.
And I believe
That will never happen again.
The water was phenomenal. It was a river out of the Crystal Lake, and we couldn't stop it. We just said, get out of the building. It was just unbelievable. It was like Niagara Falls. It was to witness it was unbelievable.
I might be dating myself, but I think I can remember the picture of Dr. Bennett on the front page of the item with, was it a shopping cart that washed through it that closed?
Yes.
So on the west side of North Ave, we actually have a grate in front of that inlet to the culvert. So the shopping carts would stop there. The street would flood over before it lodged itself inside of it. But
Just a memory in my memory bank. So all right.
certainly not one to forget. That's for sure.
True. Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? Can I have a motion to accept the Weston and Sampson proposal for the feasibility study of the DPW in the amount of $91,000?
I motion we accept the proposal in the amount of $91,000 for Weston and Sampson.
I'll second that.
All right. Any other further discussion? All in favor, Jason?
Yep.
Tom?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And myself. Unanimous. Thank you, Joe.
So can I ask you one question really quick?
Yeah, when are you plowing our streets or my driveway or what? Oh, no, I'm sorry.
We're still there now.
I asked you. No.
So next steps, I'm probably going to reach out to them and talk to them. Do you want me to have them come for like kickoff, the introductory meeting with
Yes.
the permanent building committee?
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll do that in January.
Okay, so I will relay that to them that's coming, and we'll be asking for that and to stay tuned for further instruction.
All right, and then they can start working with you and the advisory committee and our liaison.
We'll do
All
it.
right.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, Joe, take care.
You're
Hi,
welcome.
Joe.
Thank you.
See you, Joe.
Next item is the high school. I had a Zoom conference with the MSBA today at noon, at 2:00, in which they went over the requirements for selection of an OPM for the feasibility study for the high school. It is a little more and extremely more complex than what we've had in the past.
Of course.
Yeah, naturally. Our committee will have to create a quote unquote selection committee. And part of the selection committee, you have to have an MCPPO, municipal purchasing power officer or something like that. That has to be part of the committee. And then there is very strict guidelines on the selection of the OPM. And I mean, the package they sent was 109 pages long on the guidelines.
Hey, Joe, I'm I'm MCPPO certified.
Oh, okay.
OPM. Yep.
Good.
I am also.
Good. You are, Tom, you are?
I am.
Oh, good. I didn't even know what the hell it meant. And I'm happy not to know what it means. However, here's the kicker. In order to get on the April 5th meeting of the OPM panel, whatever, for the MSBA, we have to have, I wrote it all down, the OPM RF request for services received by the MSBA by January 7th.
Of course. Thanks for the notice.
Correct. Then advertised in the central registry by January 21st. It has to be essentially, the ad has to appear by the 27th of January. The applications have to be due by the 10th of February. And then we have to get to the OPM selection panel for the MSBA by March 3rd. So I will discuss, there's certain people that also have to be in this besides this MCPPO. And I'm going to talk to the MSBA to make sure we have the necessary people. I think like the superintendent has to be there. And the town administrator, I think, has to be in it. So I'm going to talk to him and find out exactly what we need to have. But in the beginning of, and I'll also talk to Steve and to Doug Lyons about who's going to start. There's a whole template of about 30 pages that we have to fill out. And I don't particularly think that should be our duties. And I'm going to talk to them to have them do it, and at least start it, and then we'll review it. We'll then in January select a selection panel prior to the 7th. So we're probably going to have to meet the first week of January. That's the bottom line here, prior to the 7th, so that we have that done, because you have to tell them who's on the selection committee and all that good stuff prior to that. So just to let you know, I thought we, had a little hiatus during Christmas, but at least I won't call a meeting for Christmas Eve. That's the only guarantee I give you right now. All right. Any questions regarding the high school feasibility study?
Can you go over some of those deadlines again? So January 7th, we need to have the selection committee figured out and the RFS?
Correct. Because on the
then-
RFS, you have to say who the selection panel is.
And then what's our night? Then 121 to advertise, but no
It
later
has to
than the
be advertised
27th?
in the center. It has to be sent to the central register by the 21st of January. It has to appear in the central register on the 27th of January. The applications have to be due February 10th. And then there's this whole enormous process after that between February and March as to where the selection committee meets, it does some initial evaluations, then there's interviews, then there's scoring that's done, and then it has to come to us for the PBC for the final vote on it, and then it goes to the OPM selection panel of the MSBA, and that has to be received by them by March 3rd so that they can meet on April 5th. They get a month to go over it. We have to do it in 2 months. Thanks a lot.
Joe, is your wife killing a chicken back there? What's going on? Is it a dog?
That's our crazy dog.
So who's in charge of
Demanding
getting the
that-
who's in charge of getting the request for services written up? And like, is that the permanent building committee? Is that a school committee because it's a school building?
That's what I'm going to talk to Steve about Monday.
Got it. Okay.
I believe the school department has to do it. I don't think that we have to do it. However, it's a template. It's not that hard. But, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I don't think that should be our responsibility.
I agree.
And they
if
must
we-
have someone in procurement or something to be able
Yeah.
to do that, right?
Yeah, it's 30 pages long. It's like absurd.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And if for some reason none of those deadlines, some one of those deadlines isn't met, we get pushed to the next cycle, like by MSBA, basically. So this could put a huge delay of what, a long time if for some reason we don't hit these marks?
we don't hit this marks, then we move to the May meeting. They meet once a month and they only do 2 OPMs a month.
Okay.
But we would move to the May meeting, not the April.
All right, well, it's better than 6-month wait.
Yeah,
1 month
yeah,
is
Yeah,
exactly.
I know, but it's still,
Oh, let's try and make
Yeah,
April.
we need to keep it, yeah.
we need
Yeah,
to try
don't-
to do it. That's all.
Yeah, don't tell people that. Let's say
Yeah,
we have to make
Yes,
this
we
April
tell people.
meeting. It's critical. Yeah,
Well, this is being recorded, so you're out of luck now.
Ah,
that's true. Well, anyone
someone's gonna
listening,
listen to it. It's all-
it's critical that we move this to the April meeting. Pass the word.
So Joe, is this OPM, you're saying that they're on for the feasibility study? Would they be on for the entire job
Yes,
from this point?
correct.
Okay.
So Joe, if we get this done by these deadlines, are we guaranteed that April meeting? I think you just said they only
Yes.
do 2 per meeting.
Yes, we are.
Oh,
We're
okay.
scheduled to slide in there right now.
Gotcha.
Now, as I say, let's see how quickly we can get it done. Hopefully it won't take that long. School department to get it done.
Thanks.
Any other questions regarding high school? All right. Now the public safety. Jane,
Evening, Joe. Evening, committee.
Jane, I have to, whatever I have to do here. Let me make you a co-host. Got it? So if you need to show
Yep.
anything, Shane, I think you should be able to now.
Yeah.
I am getting
Can,
better at this, guys.
Can you hear me
Yep.
and you see this?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay,
Yep.
excellent. So again, yeah, we'll just go through our kind of standard OPM report. You guys got that yesterday. The agenda we just have the meeting minutes from last month on the administrative actions. We'll look at the design schedule. We've updated that a bit since our last meeting. Project budget. We talked a little bit about the construction manager risk pre-qualification selection process, and then next meeting. So just a couple of items for tonight's meeting. First one is the meeting minutes. I hope you guys had a chance to review those and go through.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as written?
I will motion to approve as written.
Thank you, Jason. Second,
Second.
any discussion? See no discussion. If there's any objection, let me know. Otherwise, it's unanimous. It's unanimous.
Thank you. Just going through our design schedule again. We looked at this last month. A couple of the dates have pushed out, namely in the schematic design. In talking with Janet and her team, we have scheduled, and Janet will talk about it later, we have scheduled those surveyors to come in early in the new year to start that work, but that's going to probably push out when we can do the actual cost estimates, when we can get the documents ready for the cost estimates and have the estimators prepare those. So I think last time we said we would have an estimate around the start to the middle of April. Is probably going to be towards the end of April when we have that first detailed schematic cost estimate. So that's the change. The other milestones or phases in design have pretty much stayed the same. Once we get that estimate, we can kind of work parallel through those phases. So we're still looking at a bid for the project sometime in October, November of next year, and starting construction in November. So we'll continue to monitor these, but these are our dates right now. Any questions on that?
So Shane, what is already causing like the shift in the dates? Is it just, pandemic related, or is it just getting schedules?
It's just getting the information to put together a good estimate. We talked about the I think it's 9 weeks to get the surveys done, both exterior and interior, and start the 3D BIM modeling. So we have to do that before Janet and her team can really start designing the building. So that will take us into February, March, before we have the documents ready. Early April, we'll get those to the estimators. It'll take 2 weeks to do the estimate itself. So the first 2 weeks of the April, we'll do the estimate. It'll take us a week to review that, and then the 4th week we'll come back to you. So we may be able to save some time on that, but right now we're looking at the end of April.
Thanks.
And while the estimators are working, the designers don't put their pencils down. They'll keep designing. So it's not like we stop work while the estimators are preparing the costs. So that's why we'll be able to make it up on the back end, and we can maintain that fall bid date and construction in November. Our overall project budget hasn't changed from what we reviewed last month. I did attach the detailed budget. I'm sure if anybody wants to review that. But there's been no changes to the budget since we reviewed it 2 weeks ago. Keep going.
Owen,
Okay. And then just some of the other discussions. So we voted to proceed with the construction manager at risk delivery method at the last meeting. So I've just updated some of the processes we have to do to go out now and hire a construction manager at risk. Our first task, step one, was to submit the application to the Office of the Attorney General, or sorry, the Inspector General. So we did that, we completed that, and that was sent in this week. They acknowledged receipt of that, and they've started to review that application. To hire a construction manager at risk, we do have to get permission from the Inspector General's office, which at this point is pretty standard, but it's just another step we have to go through. So that application has been submitted. They have 45 days to review that, but we expect that we'll get a approval back before the 45 days. They've been approving them in about 4 weeks now. So that's done. Step two is we need to establish a pre-qualification committee. This is the committee that will ultimately review the qualifications of the construction managers at risk, pre-qualify them, allow them to submit proposals, and interview, and then hire a construction manager at risk. So the second step is the pre-qualification committee. The Mass General laws require us to have a minimum of 4 people on that committee, 2 representatives from the awarding authority, a representative from the OPM firm, and a representative from the designer firm. So if we could pick those tonight, that would be great. If we don't tonight, we can certainly push it. I heard Joe talking about the OPM for the high school, so there may be a few subcommittees that you guys need to pick. But
Shane, let me ask you about that. The pre-qualification committee, when would they be meeting? What would that wouldn't occur until after we get the approval from the Office of Inspector General, right?
No, we can go ahead, work in parallel. The Attorney General has allowed us to do that. We just wouldn't be able to formally execute a contract with a construction manager, but we can start the RFQ process and the RFP process while they're doing their review.
Yeah, this is what I didn't understand. So it's a pre-qualification committee, and that occurs after the RFP goes out?
Well, I'd like the pre-qualification committee to be on board when the RFQ goes out, and they can review it. I've started preparing it already. I can have that to folks sometime next week. But I'd like to get that pre-qualification committee up and running so I can go through the process with them and how to review, what to review, and what their tasks and responsibilities are.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, I suggest we do, because we don't have a full group tonight. I suggest we do that at the beginning of January.
Okay, that'll work.
Yeah.
We should put that on the agenda as well. We're supposed to include whatever votes we're going to take on the agenda.
Okay, yep. So once that pre-qualification committee is formed, we'll issue a request for qualifications to CMs. That's a public advertisement. CM firms will review the RFQ. They'll prepare what's called a statement of qualifications. They'll submit those. That's what the pre-qualification committee will review. By law, we're required to pre-qualify at least 3 firms. If we get 6 firms that submit, we have to pre-qualify at least 3 of them. If we only get 2 firms that submit, we have to re-advertise and go through the process again. So between now and that time, we'll also try and drum up some interest in this project and make sure that we can pre-qualify at least 3 firms for the CM. We'll need to establish a selection committee. Every one of these that I've done, the selection committee has been the exact same as the pre-qualification committee. Again, it's 4 folks, minimum of 4 folks on that. So we will have to just reestablish that and decide if it's going to be the same people on the selection committee as the pre-qualification committee. We will issue requests for proposals to those pre-qualified construction managers. Only pre-qualified construction managers will be allowed to submit proposals. If firms have not partaken in the RFQ process, they won't be allowed to partake in the RFP process. Only pre-qualified contractors will be allowed to do that.
All right, I have a question, Shane.
Yeah.
I mean, step 3, you're preparing an advertising request for qualifications.
Right.
And then the request for proposals comes after that. Is that how it goes?
Correct, yeah.
And the request for proposals just goes to the 3 firms?
The
Or
pre-qualified
just at
firms,
least
yeah,
3
it's a
firms?
minimum of 3, Joe. We can pre-qualify as many as we want, but it's a minimum
Okay.
of 3.
All right.
So,
Okay.
so Shane, what's the timeline on this?
I did put together a schedule that we can look at. You know, I'm hoping to get the RFQ out sometime in January. Start that process. Get the statements of qualification back by February 10th. We'll review those. We should be able to do that in a week or 2. Then we'll get an RFP out sometime in March. Sorry, late February. And get the proposals in on March 10th, and hopefully we'll be able to pick a CM by March 18th. So you know, we can move pretty quickly. I think the goal here would be to have somebody on for that schematic design. The first task would probably be to do a schematic design estimate in April. So if we can have a CM on board by the end of March, early April, I think that would be ideal for the project. Get them on
Just to let you know, Shane, you know, the full committee will have to, after that pre-qualification, I think the full committee will have to vote on that.
Understood. Yes. So that's that meeting on March 18th or sometime around then that the PBC would vote on the construction manager. If that
No,
goes
I mean earlier too. That
Um,
statement, the selection committee has to review the,
Yeah,
The
it would be
firm.
Joe, would it be the full committee would be the selection committee? Is that,
ultimately, but there'll be a
Ultimately.
working committee to deal
Yep.
with some of the ins and outs, but the ultimate decision would be the full committee.
that's understood. Yeah. So the selection committee would report up to the full building
Yep.
committee who would approve this. Yeah.
I'm just-
So I have that built into the schedule also, Joe.
Okay. Just, okay, good.
So yeah, so that's the process. As I said, we've started. We have that application in. I'm probably about 80% through the RFQ. I'll finish that up. I'll have it finished next week, or we can distribute it early in January. And if we can pick that pre-qualification committee in early January, that would be ideal, and we'll get the ball rolling on the construction manager risk selection process.
Any questions? All right. Next, Shane.
And that was it for us tonight. It was a quick meeting. I think
Okay.
Janet has some reporting. We did meet with the working group.
Yeah, that's
We
what
did
I'd like
meeting
to
with
know.
Chief Scory and his folks. So I think Janet's going to give an update on that and
Okay.
on the survey process. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane.
Joe, Joe, you're going to have to make me a presenter. I'm going to, as Shane asked me to essentially show what he did with the working group, summarize it. So.
Oh, all right. Oh,
Condense this.
I just have like 6 slides, 7 slides. It's quick. And if you can't get me, Joe, I can
I think I
tell
did
you.
it.
You think you did it?
I think so.
Okay.
I pressed a button.
Okay. All right. So let's see.
Stop laughing, Lynn.
Let's see. Hold on. I'm gonna bring my
So if you
PowerPoint
slide your
up.
mouse across the bottom, Janet,
Yeah, I'm looking for the share screen. There it
Yep.
is. And none of them. Oh, there it is right there.
Yep.
All right. Got it. Can you see it?
Yep.
All right. Okay. I'm going to go into a full line. Hold on. Okay. So we met with the full committee and I gave them an update, meeting with the working group. We went over a little bit more detail about the program review, structural and MEP assessment and concept plan reviews. It's much of the work that you've seen already. And we talked a bit about the upcoming work as well. So, and I'm not going to read all this, but we went through the programming and the building assessments. We talked about the process, so everybody that wasn't involved in the process could understand what we did, touring, programming sessions, looking at the results, looking at spaces that were met, what weren't met, what were lacking, all that kind of stuff. And then the summary from both the police and fire department sides, what happened, what was the results, what spaces were undersized. So we went through that in a little bit of detail. We also reviewed the structural and MEPFP related items because they're important, particularly because the structural review showed the limitations of adding up as opposed to out in the building. So I went through that again with them as well as talking about the MEPFP items, what needed update and what could be added on to. So we went through that a little bit of detail. So just to highlight the existing conditions areas, we went through those again so everybody could understand why we made the decisions we made on the committee back then. They included the entry sequence of how people come onto the site and how they meet with individual departments and how they get help in emergency situations. We talk about the limitations of the undersized rooms and whether there was appropriate office space, abilities to expand locker rooms, the fact that the storage rooms were lost because they're not occupied by personnel, conference room sizes, record storage, and then the overall lack of expansion space. We talked about the locations of the two big items that would move, which included dispatch and the evidence being sort of remote from where the operations actually takes place. And then we talked about the Sally Port, the impound base, and what we were proposing and why we had to do what we did. So we went through all of that. And then we talked a bit about the additions. Again, we went through it. We talked about the amount of square footage we were adding. It's essentially about 3,200 square feet on Union Street. And then the 63 square foot addition at the entry point, and 282 gross square feet for the Sally Port on Crescent. So we went through all of that. We talked a bit about the delta, what we were down, and how you do programming, and you come up with the delta, and then the reality of actually doing it sometimes is different. And then we talked about the fire department reorganization would be very minimal except for the entry sequence, and that will hopefully be much improved. But most of the operation changes will occur in the police department. The only places that aren't going to change very much are detention, although there will be some changes because of adding some storage. We're going to give up one cell and some storage room there. So we talked about that, and then people ask questions. Individual questions from Chief Scory and staff members who were there. They basically had a general satisfaction for the way the building was organized. We talked about what happens next and how that might impact any of the work that was done. And we talked about getting the code analysis done and more structural work. And as we begin to develop the plans, there may need to be adjustments. And of course, we would come back to them and make sure that they understood that and had any questions. So there will be a lot of giving back and forth when we're doing that work. There's a big discussion about security issues. The entry-exit vestibule on Center Street, which is essentially on the upper level plan on Center Street, right outside the chief's office, is a highly used door, and there's concern about security on that. We talked about the main lobby on Union Street, bulletproof glazing on the new exterior windows, as well as interior glazed openings in the lobby. We talked about alarm systems and how it might operate, what time the vestibule might be locked down. Is it 10 o'clock at night? Is it later? Who's going to be in those spaces at what time? So again, all of that will be worked out in more detail along the way. But these are big and very important concerns as we look forward to the next phase. another big thing that was brought up was about the scanning process. That process is going to take quite a bit of time. And so there was concerns. I've spoken with our scanners, and they wanted everybody to know the instruments are eye safe. People are free to go about their daily activities while they're doing the work. And the planning for that work will be, obviously going to be coordinated with the departments in town. They're going to be, I'll talk a little bit about this in another slide, but they're going to need cooperation from inside the building and outside the building. So we talked about that. And then we also talked about phasing during construction, because it's a major concern to everybody. And the building's going to be fully occupied. What happens there? There was some discussion about trailers closing down streets or parking areas. What was the process involved in that? We talked about having our code consultant be a part of that discussion. That'll be important because egress will be very important all through construction to make sure that none of that changes and people could safely still get out of the building no matter what's going on. So we see these as early planning issues, and the CM will be a big part of that discussion along the way. So those were issues that were brought up by folks who were attended the meeting. So moving forward, what happens? Well, Shane talked about the schedule and the slippage and things like that. We're going to work to, once we get an absolute start and stop dates from everybody that's involved in this early field work, I'm going to work with Shane to fine tune that schedule. We're pushing everybody to get it done faster. Everybody understands that we want to get going. I have talked to the WSP, who's doing both the site and the building scans. The site survey is going to be a 2-day effort, and it's planned to be the same first 2 days of the building scan. And the building scan is planning to start on January 4th and run for 8 to 9 days, not including the weekend. And they'll be inside and outside the building. They sent us drawings yesterday of what they're planning to do. I sent them to Shane. I don't know if Shane's had an opportunity to share them with anyone yet. It just came in at the end of the day yesterday. So, and we've had a snow day here. So I don't know, but there are some plans, and it specifically says what's going to happen on day 1 and 2, day 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, in sequence. So we have that. It's really important for the chiefs, both chiefs, to be involved in that. It's going to affect both their departments. It's also going to affect the exterior of the building, because they are going to be scanning the entire exterior of the building on the levels. So we're going to need to do some thinking about how that gets organized. The other thing that's going to happen is the geotechnical, which is going to include 3 borings. I did not get a date from the drillers yet, but they're working on it. So they're planning on getting that work done in January as well. So all this initial work that is going to essentially involve the departments is going to happen hopefully in January without delay. And then after they finish that 9-day effort, for instance, they'll have finished the site survey as well. Then they have to go back and do a lot of time to build these models. They scan and then they build the models. We have asked them if they can prioritize the work at the Union Street Police Department side, if they can at first, so that we can kind of get going. And so they may be able to do that. So we'll talk more with them once they see what they're facing and how they get that together. So there will be coordination work, I assume, with the town, because Union Street is going to be affected by the drillers, and as well as the streets where the Sally Port is as well. So those 2 streets will be affected. They're also going to be scanning on all 4 sides of the building. So there's 4 streets: Princess, Crescent, Center. They're all going to be affected somehow. So we have to get a little bit of information about that one. So that's the big effort right there. And then we'll obviously present anything we find to the committee, especially if it affects anything that we're going to be doing. And then we'll move into the schematic design and construction document process. And of course, HKT will be involved in that CM risk effort for selection, and then trying to work with them immediately to see how they can impact whatever we're doing as far as phasing goes. It would be a particularly helpful piece of it. And that's all I have to say. Any questions?
So I did send those drawings over to Chief Scory and Chief Sullivan yesterday. Both of them responded that January 4th works. They just wanted a little bit more information, specifically kind of start and finish times, the hours that they'll be on site. But
hours on
January
site.
4th works. Works for them.
And then how might the work on the outside be coordinated? Is that also good? I don't know if it's. I mean, obviously, the police need to be involved to close anything down. They're there, but who else might be part of that is a
For
question.
Geotech.
Yeah, well, the
Yeah.
geotech, but even when they're scanning, if they have to block a sidewalk to set up a scan, I don't know, exactly. I can ask them, how they scan, how far away they scan on the outside, things like that. So that may have
Yeah,
some
if
impact.
you're blocking sidewalks or curb, openings, you'll have to get a permit
Yeah.
from the town.
Well, we should just check that, Jack. I mean, you're just talking about setting up a tripod. You're not talking about shutting down a.
Oh, no, I mean,
yeah.
they're just setting up, these scanning pieces, and so it's probably more like a, somebody doing a survey rather than a, blocking the street. But when the borings are done, yes, those are going to be more
shut the street
complicated.
down to the boring. So we need to know the date for that before we can.
Yeah,
sort of do
exactly.
anything on that.
Yeah, and that is really the drilling contractor that they have to. They put in the request. They started the process, but they hadn't, as of yesterday or this morning, they hadn't heard back from the driller yet. So.
Yeah, once we have a date from the driller, we'll work. They'll have to do a.
We'll work backwards. Yep.
They'll have to do a dig safe before they do the work also. So once we have a date, we can set all that up.
They did say that they'll try to stay out of everyone's way. With the scanning interior, that, again, it's safe for people to be there when the scanning is done. They don't have to move if you guys want to move out of the way. That's fine too, and you'll know which days the drawings for everyone else, says they're going to be in, for instance, the exterior, buildings are days 1 and 2, and then they go to the garage and, days 3, 4, they have it all mapped out. So you'll know exactly when they're going to be in the building. And I don't know what happens if they finish something quicker than they do. Would they move to another space? I could ask them that. I don't know. They know they do this all the time. So I guess they have a pretty standard time frame, and they know how big the building is and all that stuff. But I'll ask them anything like that, any of the details.
Hey, Janet,
Yes.
can we find out when they're doing the borings if the Sally Port is going to be non-accessible during that?
It will be not accessible for during that drill. So
do we know how long the drilling is
yes.
going to last? Do we know how long it takes?
I think it's only one boring, on that site, and 2 on the front on the Union Street site. So I can't imagine it be more than a couple hours, at most a day. But and that's probably to set up the drill, if they're, and then do the drill. And I think they're only going 25 feet, so it's not extensive. But I will find out about that as well. So.
Okay.
So I think typically it's a day to do the drilling. You usually get about 4 borings on a day. So
yeah,
they'll probably half a day at the back at the Sally Port and half the day in the front doing.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming. But because I have to move the drillers from one part of the street to the other, I don't know how complicated that part of it is. But
yeah, not complicated at all.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be complicated. So.
All right.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions?
Chief Scoring, were you able to, I know you had some questions regarding when we were talking with Janet earlier, some changes or things of that nature that you were talking about. Were you able to discuss that with her at the working group?
We did. You talked, yeah, that list that I had before, we went over that at the working group.
Good. Okay.
And there'll be details. I mean, that was just step 1. We were we're not looking for major restructuring of the locations. And not that they can't make those changes between, before we get started, if, they keep looking at it, and we'll work closely with them to make sure that that they know what we're doing. The other person I might get working right away is the code consultant. Now that there's not going to be significant changes to the plan, I might get them working earlier, first of January, perhaps, so that we can be prepared, because the plan, they can look at the plans and they can do a lot of stuff. And we also want them to be really involved as far as any phasing that goes on too. So I'm going to be talking to them about that as well. So.
Chief Sullivan, do you have any questions?
Probably a little early. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, probably a little bit early. My staff and I have been discussing once the construction actually starts, and I know we're a ways away from that.
Yeah.
How's the public going to access us, our space?
That's one of the big issues we're going to have.
We talked a little bit about that at the working group meeting, but we definitely need to talk more about that, Chief.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
just want to make sure it's in there somewhere.
It's in there.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chief Sullivan, I don't know if you remember during the study, we did bring it up, and we did come up with like one or two kind of complex little planning things, like, coming in from each of the ends of the buildings, relocating people to the big training room, and coming in from the rear. I mean, we talked about all that. It's complicated for certain. But we'll be talking that in a great deal over the next months. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd like to get, obviously, I know we're going to get it, but we'd like to get a heads up in terms of, we are going to have to relocate offices, and I'll have to probably put my secretary in a conference room and stuff like that. So
yep.
We're actually talking about moving people around ahead of time just to get it done and get people settled. So that's another concern of folks. We're going to be losing that training room for a while, right? Isn't the police department moving in there for a bit?
I don't think anything has been decided. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
So I think once
it might.
Once we get that construction manager, we've already started thinking about it and working on what was done in the study. But once we get the construction manager who's actually going to manage the building and the construction on board in April, we'll implement that into the schematic design, and probably in the spring or summer we'll know more about what moves have to be made and where access will be. So you guys will know 3-4 months ahead of time before we start construction. But we haven't started the process yet, but we will in the spring of next year.
Okay, that's fine. I thought the questions might have been a little bit early. We had kind of brainstormed an idea to come up with a training room in the existing fire station. It basically involved taking a wall down between the kitchen and there's like for lack of a better word or description, a TV room next to it. I don't believe it's a bearing wall, but that's not my specialty. But we were just kicking around ideas of, if we do lose our training site, maybe being able to, by doing some quick and relatively easy renovations in the station, make another room so that fire and, if necessary, police would have a small area to do trainings.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd throw that out. I know that's wicked early, but I'd rather throw it out now and get it in there somewhere than forget.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chief.
That's it. That's all I got.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So I think, once we start talking about that sort of stuff in those working group meetings, we'll make sure you're invited, Chief, so that you can, have input on what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and where we're going to do it.
Okay.
That will happen in the spring, probably.
Yeah, I missed the last working meeting. I apologize.
No problem.
Craig, did you have any questions?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. All right, anything else, Shane?
That's it for us, Joe. Thank you.
Janet, all set?
I'm all set.
Well, the important thing is to everybody have a great holiday.
Yes.
Do we want to just schedule the next meeting?
Let me talk to What is the first Thursday in January?
7th.
January
Seven.
7th.
Yeah, we can't do that. We gotta do early because we have to.
Meet Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah, we have to submit the thing, but so we'll probably have to meet on Tuesday, the 5th. Either that or New Year's Eve, but I don't think you guys are really into that.
I don't think we'll have anything to say
I'm
by
not
January.
going anywhere, so.
No, sadly, none of us will be, but
Yeah.
I don't think we'll have anything to say on January 5th, Shane, necessarily.
No, I
No,
think
this
that's
is for
our
the
next
high-
working group is the
The high
6th.
school, yeah.
We have to do it for the high school, Janet.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yes,
Yeah.
of course. I was listening. Yeah.
And then we'll also do that pre-qualification.
Pre-qual committee, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Anybody have anything else? How about a motion to adjourn? So done. And when all in favor, just click leave meeting.
Yeah.
Um,
I motion to adjourn.
All right.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Oh.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Be safe.
Joe, I have a question for you.
Oh, no.
No adjourn.
When?
No, this is after the meeting. I just wanted to ask.
Okay.
Okay.
Who?
Um,
For who?
happy holidays, everybody. Merry
Thanks,
Christmas.
Lynn.
All right,
Okay.
take care.
Take care.